It's time for another episode of the Coaching Outdoors podcast. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for listening in. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. I am Anna Marie, and I am joined by my partner in crime, Paul Jeffries. And in the hot seat today, we have Annabelle Charman. And she has been on our radar for a while because she is one of the amazing coaches who is taking it upon themselves to do some research into the outdoor and nature connected coaching space, of which we need more research. So she has literally handed her dissertation in the last month. So this is hot off the press. So yeah, sit back, listen in. You are in for a treat. Annabelle, it would be amazing if you could just introduce yourself to our listeners and maybe describe the gorgeous backdrop that you have behind you as well, because I know it is near where you live.
Yes, well, hello. Thank you so much, Anna Marie and Paul, for inviting me today. I must confess, I feel a bit of imposter syndrome because I've been listening to the podcast for quite a while now, and you've had so many wonderful guests. So it's a real honour to be here. So thank you. So my name's Annabelle Charman. I work full-time in financial services. I coach internally within the organisation, but also have my own coaching practice called Guiding Action. So I coach outdoors in my own time and also qualified lowland and hill and moorland leader. So I lead individuals and groups in the outdoors. I'm really passionate about introducing people to kind of the benefits of outdoor coaching, helping them to explore the outdoors, learn more about nature, and in doing so, learn more about themselves. I'm in the process of completing my MSc in Coaching and Behaviour Change at Henley Business School, and really excited to share some of the research with you. And yes, my background, this lovely forest path with the bluebells, I took a picture, I think it was probably about a month ago. It's near the village where I live in North Wales. And so I thought I'd share that with you today.
No, Annabelle, thank you so much for describing, and for those who are going to be watching online, you could be able to see the lovely backdrop. But it's a beautiful wood full of bluebells and my favourite trees, which are fabulous. So, and Annabelle, it is absolutely wonderful to have you along. And we are always so interested to talk to people who are and in the process of research and stuff. It's, as we've already said, it's so needed. And so you are extremely welcome here today. And don't think about that imposter syndrome. We are absolutely privileged, and it's a pleasure to have you come on. And as we dive into this, I'm without a shadow of a doubt, you'll have lots of insights for our listeners and watchers to learn and hear from. So as you know, the question is coming up, the traditional standard, the question that we love asking people, and we're going to take you right back to your earliest memory. So we would love you to share with our listeners, what is your earliest memory of being outdoors? And then the second part of that is, why do you love being outdoors so much? So earliest memory.
Yes, I really do love this question because it brings out some fantastic memories from people, and I've thought about it quite a lot. And I think there's a bit of a theme with mine because I grew up in Somerset, so just below the Quantock Hills, and I think some of my earliest memories are linked to kind of food and growing food outdoors. So I remember being with my granddad in his greenhouse, and he used to grow tomatoes, and that wonderful smell of kind of homegrown tomatoes and the care and the love he put into growing them for us. And it was equally with my aunt and uncle when we went to visit them. They had a strawberry patch, and they used to let us go when we visited and pick some strawberries, and it was like a real treat for us. So we'd take a little bowl out to the strawberry patch, and but I remember that I was eating one and then putting one in the bowl. So by the time that I'd actually gone back into the kitchen with the bowl, I think I'd eaten far more strawberries. There's probably only about a few in the bottom of the bowl because I'd eaten them all. But again, that smell of kind of the produce and then making something together as a family with what had been grown. And then, as I said, it's a theme because the final one is, I remember with my mum, when I was quite young, we walked up the road to the local farmer's field, and he kindly said to us we could pick some of the field mushrooms that were growing there. And we took this massive washing basket with us and filled it to the brim with mushrooms, field mushrooms. And I just remember again taking it back, and as a family we would kind of make loads of things. I think we were eating mushrooms for kind of the next month in every meal because we had so many of them. But yeah, those are kind of my first memories and connections with the outdoors, that kind of that time together, and that wild produce and the smells that kind of I remember, and it evokes all those wonderful memories. So yeah, those are kind of my connection with the outdoors. But I think my love of the outdoors, it's such an integral part of my life, and that connection really only came properly, I think, later in life, when I started running. So I became a road runner, but then I transitioned to trail running and was able to explore so much more as part of that. And it took me to lots of wild places. That's how I developed kind of into taking my Lone and Leader and Hill and Moorland Leader courses, because I wanted to kind of be able to share those experiences with other people and lead groups in the outdoors. And I think the outdoors just became such an integral part of my life. And walking and running has become like a bit of a meditative practice for me. So that's how I reflect and think. And also how I process kind of my emotions as well. So it's really very important to me. And that's kind of where my love of the outdoors has come from.
Oh, you are speaking my language, and I'm just like reeling myself back here. Like, we're not going on a running tangent. We're not going on a running tangent. But yeah, trail trumps road every time. Oh my goodness. And I hadn't realized you'd grown up in Somerset, which is clearly where I am based now, in the beautiful town of Frome. And for a moment you teleported me back to my grandma's greenhouse, where she used to grow tomatoes as well, and that smell so visceral. And then her tomato chutney was just absolutely famous, and I was so proud of myself a couple of years ago when I made some tomato chutney, aged, I don't know, 44, life achievements. Being my grandma, and the food theme in your memories, I don't think we've had a food theme before, so thank you for bringing the mushrooms and the strawberries and the tomatoes and that different sense to the podcast. So the next question, there's a lot in it, so just go where you want to go with it. This is all about diving into your decision to become a coach. Like, what prompted you to become a coach? Clearly you still work with Close Brothers Property Finance as well as a divisional COO, so that in a role as itself. And then that decision to study the Masters in Behavioural Change at Henley, just that in itself is a big commitment. So I'm just going to step back, and where you go with this, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I like to be busy, so and I like a challenge. So yeah, so I work full time in kind of financial services, but one of the most enjoyable and rewarding parts of my role has always been the people development side. So I was fortunate enough to be already kind of mentoring internally and also in some of the external kind of industry networks. And then I was asked to be part of a leadership development program. And as part of that, I was offered some coaching. Um, and that's kind of really where I first was introduced to coaching. And I just found it so transformational for me personally. And that's what really sparked my interest in it. And so at the time, a colleague was taking some qualifications and at Henley Business School, and I saw that they had the personal professional certificate in coaching. And I thought, wow, it'd be great to be able to learn more about coaching and really be able to support people. And so that I started the certificate in, I think, 2019, and I was really lucky that I was able to attend kind of first workshops at the Greenlands campus, because I managed to finish those just before COVID hit, and then I transitioned to kind of online for the rest of it. But yeah, my full-time role is really busy, but my manager and the team have been really supportive of me doing the coaching qualification, because I think that they recognise that it kind of complements my role as a manager and leader, because the skills that I learn as a coach obviously allow me to develop personally, but also to kind of really help my team. And so, yeah, they've been great and really supportive. So whilst it's been a challenge to kind of do both, I think they kind of complement each other quite a lot. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, I suppose.
That's fantastic, Annabelle. And probably so many people will resonate with that. I mean, I think it is interesting. I came to coaching a little bit through a very similar story. I have a corporate background and doing a similar, COO role, etc. I got introduced to coaching through a very similar process, taking some myself. And it's amazing to me how many people, there's a gateway, a segue into it, that you realize that. And sometimes I suspect, Annabelle, like me, you may well have been doing coaching for a long time, but not perhaps always realizing what it was. So it's fascinating, and again, it's so good to hear that the supportiveness of other people around you, stakeholders, in allowing you to have that. And we share Henley as a place I've studied a lot, and again, it's an amazing place as you drive up the drive into that rather supportive, restorative learning centre. So that's fantastic, and I'm sure that will resonate with many of our listeners. So just going another layer down as we go into the peeling the onion. So we're going to part of that master's program that you have coming to the end of. Many of our listeners will know, and if not, there is an integral research part to that, and it's an investigation of coaching and behavioral topics of your choice. And so what we would love to know is, how did you make the decision to focus on outdoor coaching and nature, and the significant sort of life transitions, etc., that come with some of that? So just keen to sort of, how did you go from, I've got to do a research project, I know I'm going to do it on nature and nature connected coaching and stuff?
Yeah, so in some respects, the choice to focus on outdoor coaching and nature was an easy one, because I started to kind of draw on outdoor coaching and introduce it into my own coaching practice. And obviously, because of my passion for the outdoors in my personal life, and it was such an integral part of my life, that that when you start to think about a research project, it has to be something that you're really passionate about, because it becomes such a big part of your life. And so I was also conscious that in the outdoor coaching field, there hadn't been a lot of research. And so I thought it was really important to try and contribute to that limited research base. And that was really important to me because as part of the outdoor coaching community, you know, I wanted to kind of give something back if I could, and perhaps offer some insights which would help our coaching practice. So yeah, that was kind of the easy decision for me. I think the significant transitions probably came more out of my personal experience. I had been coaching a number of people through kind of significant life events. And I'd had some obviously experience from a coaching perspective, but I would reflected back on how being outdoors and nature had helped me to navigate some of the really challenging transitions in my own life. And during kind of in the period before COVID and after, there was kind of a period in my life of about 2.5 years where 4 of my kind of family members died in relatively short succession. And that was, yeah, a really difficult time. And I found being in the outdoors was a bit of a kind of lifeline for me. It really helped me to get through that time and process kind of what I was going through. And so when I was thinking about the research project, I really thought, wow, you know, I'd really like to understand other people's experiences in that context, and not just with regards to bereavement, but also other significant transitions. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of landed on the Coaching Outdoors and significant life transitions as a research project.
And just taking a moment to acknowledge the loss that you experienced through that period of time, which, yeah, the words and how nature can hold our emotions just so gracefully when there can be so much grief and sorrow and anger and despair and torment and senselessness at it all. And whether that's around bereavement and, you know, these other significant transitions, and curious to hear the stories as they unfold, and the fact that you had participants who were willing to share, because that in itself takes courage. And I think as coaches, we really need to recognize, you know, our clients who are stepping towards doing the work and facing it, and then also those who are willing to share within the research as well, because it really is giving back on so many levels, and it's opening up and being vulnerable. So I just really want to acknowledge and create just a space for that, and also to anyone who's listening in, whether you've been through a similar period or time, or you might be going through a significant life transition at the moment, just be assured, you know, you are not alone. There is support for you. So please do reach out.
Mm-hmm.
And moving into the research bit of it, and this is where I put my hands up and go, I'm not an academic. I'm not into the crunchy research. I'm a practitioner through and through to the heart. So this question is very much for our more academically curious-minded listeners. And potentially, if you're a coach and you're listening in and you're thinking, actually, yes, I want to get involved in this part and maybe do a bit of research. So this is more kind of the process, the project, like, how did you even break it down? What was the starting point? How did you pull it together? Maybe what changed, more from the research perspective?
So I'll be fully transparent here, Anna Marie. I am also one of these people who the research element kind of scared me a little bit, I must confess. I'm not a natural researcher, I don't think, or indeed an academic, perhaps, but it was such a rewarding process, but really hard, but rewarding. So because of the nature of my research, and as we talked about, some of the kind of it was going to be quite emotive, and it was about the real experiences of the individuals. So that kind of informed the methodology that I use for my research, because it naturally lent itself to qualitative research, which is tends to be a smaller sample size and really kind of spending time in depth looking at individual experiences. And I used an interpretive phenomenological approach. I've managed to say that, or IPA as it's known, which is slightly more catchy. And IPA is used to kind of step into the shoes of the participant and really kind of understand their experience of the life transition and how that's impacted by the outdoor coaching. And it allowed me as a researcher to really examine their individual perspectives and their unique contexts. So it was IPA that I kind of landed on as the approach that I was going to take. So I contacted my network of coaches and I reached out to the community, and they were fantastic and really supportive. And I said, do you have any coaches who have been through significant life transition and have sought outdoor coaching to kind of support with that? And I asked them to, if they did, to perhaps ask their coaches to get in touch with me direct, because it was really important that confidentiality and anonymity was maintained. So the coaches wouldn't necessarily know if their coach had contacted me or not. So I was asking for 6 to 8 participants, and I was very fortunate that I received kind of some responses from people who were willing to participate. And as you were saying before, Anna Marie, it's kind of because these are really emotive and difficult subjects to talk about. And so I felt really honoured and privileged to be able to spend that time with people and for them to share their experiences with me. So I sent them information in advance. It's similar to coaching in terms of it was important to contract with them, make sure they understood the process. From an ethics perspective, which is part of the Henley process, I needed to, make sure that ethically we were taking the right, giving the right information, but also kind of safeguarding those individuals. So signposting them if they felt they needed additional support that I wouldn't be able to give as a researcher. So if they felt kind of they needed someone to talk to after the interview, then signposting them to the right resources. And then just getting their consent, obviously, to record the sessions. So we had semi-structured interviews over Zoom and recorded them, and those were later transcribed. So the interviews were around 60 to 90 minutes. And once we did the interviews, I then went through all the transcripts, and this was kind of the analysis phase of the research. So the analysis phase, even though you know the methodology, you really underestimate how long it takes and how in-depth it is, because I went through all of the individual transcripts multiple times, watched the videos back multiple times, listened to them multiple times, quite often I would do that when I was walking outdoors to kind of fully immerse myself in the experience of the coachees and what they were describing about their experiences. I'd make notes on all of the transcripts and then bring together what we'd call kind of personal experiential themes for the participants. So themes in what they were discussing about their experience of the coaching and the transition in their life. Then once I'd done that, I looked for group experiential themes, so themes across all of the participants. And part of that process, so if you'd have seen my room where I work at that time, there were hundreds of post-it notes everywhere. There was lots of paper on the floor from transcripts that have been cut up, highlighted, themes clumped together. It was kind of a very kind of dynamic and lengthy and in-depth process, but also really rewarding. So the essence of it was to come up with kind of group themes which really encapsulated the experience of the coachees, and how they moved through those transitions and navigated them during the course of their outdoor coaching.
Brilliant. Thank you, Annabelle. That's and a very comprehensive answer, I think, for our listeners to note. And having gone through the process myself with my MBA, I think I'm triggered. You suddenly brought it all coming back to me. It's like all that moments of, oh gosh, yes. I guess, and you've covered so much there. I mean, what slightly the question, I guess, Annabelle, is for our listeners in that sense, what would be the advice, the challenges that, what was this perhaps you might give us an insight, somebody who may be thinking, it sounds really good, I want to get into something around research and nature. Were there any clear challenges that you came across?
I think the challenges were really making sure that you stay true to the experience of the coachees. So when we think about coaching and as coaches, we bring ourselves to the coaching relationship, and we have our own biases and experiences that we need to reflect upon and be able to set aside in the coaching process. And the same is true, I think, of research. But one of the challenges in the research is you can't completely separate your own experiences from the research, because in IPA, it's my interpretation of that person's experience. So I have to overlay my own interpretation on it. And so that's a real challenge sometimes. So staying true to the experience of the participants and what the meaning held for them, but also putting my own overlay onto that and interpreting it. So it took quite a lot of reflection, I think, and being mindful and conscious of those biases. So I'd say that's a real challenge, but I definitely say it's incredibly rewarding and also a great way to enhance your skills, I think, from a coaching perspective.
I think in terms of sort of, it's really interesting for me to sort of that transference, projection, your opinion as a researcher to sort of, continue for our listeners to hear that's really important and stuff. And timeline as well, Annabelle, how long what are we talking here from start to finish? That's also a very useful thing for our listeners to hear.
So I started thinking about my topic this time last year. So it took me quite a while to kind of think about it. And the research itself, I started the interviews, I think, was around October time. So, and So it's quite a lengthy kind of period for the research because it's so in depth. But I wouldn't want people to be put off by that, because it is incredibly worthwhile, and there's so many different types of research project that you could do. So it's difficult to define kind of just kind of one set process.
So when you're pulling all the analysis together, it's then linking it to a model to base your research on. So what model did you end up choosing, and how did you reach that decision? And then maybe what other options did you consider?
Yes, so as I said, I started thinking about this this time last year, and there is a wonderful connection here, because I'd already formed the idea of kind of the outdoor coaching and significant life transitions. And when I was at the Coaching Outdoors podcast live event at Henley last year, we were in one of the breaks, and I was wandering around the grounds of the Greenlands campus, and I came across Jonathan Passmore, who was also walking around. And I got chatting to kind of Jonathan, and I'd been really inspired by the research that he'd undertaken with Alex on attention restoration theory. And I explained to him that I was kind of embarking on some research, and explained kind of the outdoor coaching and significant life transitions element. And he said, "Oh, have you looked at William Bridges' transition model?" And I hadn't. So after the event, I kind of rushed off and started to research that. And so full credit to Jonathan, because he kind of inspired me to look at that. And if you're not familiar with it, the Bridges transition model was originally used in an organizational context to kind of support companies and leaders to navigate change, but it focuses on the personal and emotional side of change. So a change is kind of something that actually happens. So that can be getting a promotion or changing the job, moving house, or it could be the death of a loved one. So it's the event. But the transition is the emotional process we go through. And in his model, he kind of describes that process as endings, the neutral zone, and then new beginnings. So the transition process kind of paradoxically starts with that endings. So it's accepting that something is coming to an end, or you've lost something, and then kind of moving into that neutral zone, which is like a kind of no man's land in the middle, I suppose, between the old and the new, where that personal realignment takes place, where you've let go of the old identity, but you haven't yet accepted a new one. But it can be a zone for a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity. And then that new beginning is where you've accepted the ending, that process of realignment has taken place, and you start to move on to the new beginning and opportunity. So I felt that for me, the Bridges transition model really kind of resonated, and therefore it was kind of an easy choice. I did look at other potential models, but yeah, so that's how I came across it. So there's kind of a bit of a link there with the podcast in a way.
Yeah, that's really good. That's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that. And that's a great model for our listeners to look up and work through that. So I guess coming to the key themes from your research, respecting full confidentiality here as well, and of your participants. But just what are those key themes that were coming out, Annabelle, that would be really, really great to hear?
Yeah, so there were 5 main kind of group experiential themes that came out from the participants, and they're real kind of the essence of the participants' experience of being coached outdoors. So the first one was around a deeper connection to self, coach, and nature. So one of the participants described being coached in the outdoors brought her back home to herself. She found that sense of self that kind of had been missing and absent. And so that deeper connection to self was really an important theme that came out in the research. But also being connected to the coach as well. I think in outdoor coaching, because it's so experiential, the participants felt perhaps a deeper connection to their coach because they were perhaps experiencing the same thing in nature. That's perhaps something you wouldn't get in a more traditional coaching environment where you're perhaps sat in a room. The coach and the coachee are experiencing perhaps the same viewpoint. They might be sitting and looking at the same kind of mountain or park, and that shared connection just and shared visual experience brings a much deeper connection for the participants, a deeper connection to their coach. So I think that was definitely one of the themes, and also the deeper connection to nature. So I'm sure other coaches have lots of kind of examples from their own practice, but one of the participants described how on their walk with their coach, they would visit the hollow of a tree each time. And they would take it in turns to stand in the hollow and connect with the tree. And the participants described it as an old friend that they would visit each time they walked together. And that was really kind of powerful for them. It was a place that they felt a lot of trust and support. And so that connection theme was kind of really clear for the participants. So to self, to coach, and to nature. The other theme was around self-prescription of nature. So all of the participants that I spoke to had taken their own practice in nature outside of the coaching sessions, and not because it was prescribed by their coach, but because they found it as a coping strategy to support them through their life transition. So one of the participants would describe the coaching as a gift that she could take into her own practice. So some of the things that she discussed and the connection with nature that she felt in the coaching practice, she then went for walks on her own quite regularly, and she would apply some of those things by herself. So, and also kind of it really came through how powerful as how coaches how powerful it is to be able to introduce perhaps our clients to nature in a different way, and that to have such a broader impact upon their lives, especially during a time in their lives where they're going through and experiencing so much. So that self-prescription of nature on behalf of the coachees was, I think, really powerful for them. Being present in the outdoors, I think, was another theme. So it's probably no surprise to say that they found being in nature was took away the distractions of day-to-day life, whether that's technology or the other things that were happening in their lives. They were able to kind of just be present and focus in that moment. And not just be present in nature, but not seeing it just as wallpaper or a screensaver, actually interacting with nature, and how that really helped to kind of ground them and be present in the moment. So I think also seeing the seasons and the environment around them and what that was teaching them was helped to keep them present in the moment in that coaching as well. And the final theme was around identity. So, and I touched on it when I talked about kind of the Bridges model, but it was that acknowledgement of letting go of that old identity. And one of the participants who was navigating a career transition talked about it being akin to a grieving process where he's letting go of the old identity in his old career, but he wasn't quite ready to accept that new identity or come to terms with it. So he was kind of in that neutral zone where he was exploring that in the coaching. And I think, you know, he just said, I'm trying to re-navigate who I am as a person and juggle these different identities. So those themes really came out in the coaching, but each of them were linked quite closely to the seasons. And I was really interested in how the seasons really came out as an overriding theme. And people could track the seasons in their own lives through that transition. And they witnessed the seasons in nature, and that helped them to kind of think about, okay, where was I this time last year when I saw the mistletoe on the trees? Or, you know, what stage of my life were I in? What were my thoughts and emotions at that point? And so the seasons were kind of integral to that as well. So those were kind of the kind of, I guess, key themes, but also I think it's worth mentioning some of the practical implications. So all of my participants commented on seeing other people when they were in the coaching environment. So for some, that elicited a really kind of strong response. They felt that it interrupted the flow of the discussion when they were with their coach, seeing another person or group of people. Whilst others said they found it quite grounding to see other people and that they were having their own experiences, and that was quite comforting for them when talking about kind of difficult things. So as coaches, I think it's quite interesting, and it's something to think about when we're contracting with our coachees, about how do they react and how do they feel when they see other people in the coaching space when we're outdoors. And also, I think one of the other key themes was around movement. So we really make, we talk about eye contact being so critical and so important. But actually, for my participants, a lot of them talked about how the lack of eye contact and just being beside someone made those discussions, particularly if they're difficult, far easier to talk about, because they felt that they had someone beside them who was creating a supportive space in nature, but they felt they were on their own and able to process their own thoughts in that moment through the movement and not being face to face with someone, but just walking beside them. So I think, yeah, that was kind of really key theme, I think, about that movement. So yeah, sorry, I've rambled on a bit there, but there were lots of different themes in the research.
And feel free to ramble away. I have been sat here hanging on your words as you have moved through the different themes and the practicalities.
Yeah.
And really want to signpost the work of Claudia, who did her dissertation very much on the movement piece and walking side by side. And she kindly shared insights from her dissertation in an earlier episode. So if you've not checked that one out, and that was also published as well in a psychology journal, which we will dig out and put in the show notes if you want to dive into that a little bit more. And love the practicalities piece and the fact that you are a Helen Lowland leader as well. I really just want to call out a bit from the practicalities and the safety perspective as well. And there is a book in the pipeline at the moment that might be being written by a number of former guests. And I've stepped into doing the practicalities piece, and the confidentiality and other people is something that I'm exploring. So it's interesting to hear your comments around that. And I mean the themes as well. And listener, I'm sure that if you have stepped outdoors and are working as a coach with clients actively at the moment, you will be recognizing this. And it's an affirmation of what we do. It's, as practitioners, we've identified and we know, and this is really confirming it through that deep analysis that you have taken the time to do so thoroughly. So thank you so much for that. And as you were doing that research, how did you balance the different parts of yourself? So clearly you're a coach, you're a human being, having been through your own significant life transitions, and you had that researcher hat on as well. So how did you manage those different parts of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally?
Yeah, it was it's an interesting question, and I think as I've said, I think I found it such a privilege to be in the researcher role, and I feel that as a coach as well. When people share their innermost thoughts with you, I think we are in a hugely privileged position to listen and to kind of almost be guardians of those thoughts and feelings. And so I felt that as a coach and researcher, particularly because of the topics that were being discussed. So some of the transitions were to do with career, some were to do with bereavement. One was an ectopic pregnancy. So they were very different transitions, but all very kind of significant and emotional for the individuals involved. And so I did find it quite difficult at times to, first and foremost, you're thinking about the well-being of the participants, because that's the most important thing, but also you're kind of thinking about your own experiences and how you're reacting to listening to those, as you would do as a coach. And as coaches, we have to kind of set aside our own emotions, don't we, at times, and park those in the service of our clients to be in the moment. But equally acknowledge that they're there and process them at a later time. And I think that really came up for me in one of the interviews when one of my participants was talking about the death of their father, and how during their coaching session they would see birds of prey in the sky, and their father had been an avid bird watcher, and seeing those birds of prey made them feel really connected to him again. And it was a really kind of emotional, but actually quite a joyful moment as well for them, because of that, the connection they felt again. And as I was listening to that as a researcher, that really triggered for me kind of the death of my own father and the emotions that brought up for me. And in that moment, I had to think, okay, is my participant okay, and check in on them? But then think, okay, this has triggered how I feel about my own grief, and set that aside quickly to step back into the role of researcher to carry on with the interview. And I think it's something I explored with my supervisor afterwards. And I think because balancing that can be really tricky. And I think, you know, coaches may feel that they've had to balance something similar in a coaching context. But so yeah, it was really difficult to kind of balance that personal researcher coach kind of role within the process. But yeah, I think there's some really good learning in there for me.
Yeah, it's lovely, Annabelle. And you know, I think what comes to my mind is, you know, so much the importance, you know, you rightly bring of supervision, both as a coach, and you know, we don't often talk about it on here, but you know, research and researcher, to some degree, I might put the point or the opinion of, you're almost amplifying some of those emotions, because your research has gone across 4 to 6 individuals. Whilst we may be in that coach role, that supervision is so important, but as a researcher, you're almost now immersed in 5 or 6 potentially, you know, and these are very emotional subjects. So, you know, I think that's a really great point that you raised around supervision and knowing when to sort of hold a boundary and deal with something yourself. Perhaps something's transferred or there's been some projection and so on. And you know, I think that's a really great point. And you know, thank you for sort of sharing that. And I'm, you know, definitely can see that as you know, being very useful for our listeners. In terms of, I mean, I guess, what have you learned about yourself from this process, both as a coach and as a human being? And I mean, you can take that positively and, you know, at where you want to go with it. But I guess huge amounts of learning.
Yeah, I've learned an awful lot, that's for sure. I think, oh, do you know, the one thing that really stands out for me is listening. So, you know, I thought I was a really kind of quite a good listener as a coach. But I, you know, listening to the transcripts and the recordings over and over again, and I must have listened to them hundreds of times. And nearly every time something different, something new came out. And it might be kind of the energy shifts. So it's a non-verbal cue some of the time. So the different energy shifts of the participants, body language, tone of voice, really tiny things which I noticed it was evolving every time that I listened. And it really taught me that, you know, as coaches, you know, we need to refine our listening skills, but think about it in a such holistic way. And so yeah, I think that really kind of made me think again about how deeply I listen as a coach. So yeah, it's I don't know if that's helpful or but yeah, that is the one thing that stood out to me.
And I'm a firm believer that any reminder around listening is welcome. And the levels of listening. And okay, so there's the word, and then there's the pitch, and then the pace, and then the fact that you're recording them, you're picking up on those nuances as well. And the fact that you're doing it again and again and again and again, like you're just getting more and more intimate with that conversation and that and that connection and that person at the heart of it. So listening, as a skill, as a coach, I think it is something that we can all improve on, however masterful we might be or how much we think we are at listening. There is always more opportunity to refine. So after investing so much time and energy in your research, where do you want to take it?
Yeah, well, I'd love the opportunity to publish it if I can. So I've had a chat with my supervisor about the opportunity to do that, because it'd be great to be able to to get it published so that it could contribute to kind of hopefully offer something valuable to the outdoor coaching community. And so that's something I'm going to pursue, definitely. And I think the findings of the research will also I'm going to use them in my own practice, and they'll help inform my own practice going forward. I'm really focusing more on those significant life transitions and what I've learned through the research. And there's lots to think about there and develop over the coming kind of months. So yeah, that's where I'd like to take it. So yeah, opportunities to share and to collaborate and work with other coaches and share the research is something that I'm going to actively pursue. And of course, I'll have lots more time now, given that I won't be actually doing the research anymore. So lots of time to focus on that practice.
That's fantastic, Annabelle. And if anybody can't see Annabelle's face, she has a smile from ear to ear around the active listening that I saw in how pleased she is to have some time. And it is fantastic. And we really wish you all the very best in getting that published. And again, you've got lots of friends here at Coaching Outdoor Podcasts around that, and whatever we can help with, because we do need to get this information, this research, anything like this out there. This is an amazing modality of which we are all very, very immersed in, but we've got spreading that word. And, the more and more people we see that come into this world, they do see the benefits very, very quickly. And, I wish you the very best with that, and definitely sharing and collaboration. So also you're going to graduate from Henley with your MSc, and what hopes for the future do you have? Perhaps where's it going for you in terms of, career or anything like that as well, Annabelle? What hopes do you have?
Yeah, finishing has mixed emotions for me. Because on one hand, it's kind of a relief because you're so immersed in it. It's such a big part of your life. And so but I will also really miss it. So, but I'm really hoping, as I said, to have that time that I've been spending on the research to kind of focus more on my my practice, and also kind of my networking in the coaching community, because, as I said, they've been so incredibly supportive of me that I really want to spend more time making those connections. So the first step on that is obviously coming along to the Coaching Outdoors event at Henley later this month, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, it's an exciting time for me, and really just, as I said, connecting with more of the community, seeing how I can weave the results of my research into my own practice is really the next step.
a period of transition as you move through this liminal space, and who knows what could emerge. Curious to see what you choose to do. So for any of our lovely listeners who are listening in, who are maybe going like, oh, research, yeah, that is my thing, what advice would you have for them?
So I would definitely make a plea to anyone who would like to do some research. It's such a fantastic experience, and very happy for them to kind of contact me, and I can share any experience that I have, although I'm kind of fairly new to this too. But I know Henley are very supportive of kind of research in our field as well, so I'm sure if they reached out to Henley, they'd be more than happy to help. But I'd also like to kind of make a bit of a call to arms to the coaching community, that if they see people who are offering to spend their time to research, the community's been incredibly supportive of me, but I'd like us to be able to really offer our contribution to any future research, and make sure that we're as supportive as possible, and perhaps connect our coachees where possible in with that research as well. So if as a community we can try and be as supportive as possible, I think that'd be fantastic, because it's all for our benefit, right? It's the benefit of our coaching community, and especially in the outdoors, because we just don't have enough research at the moment.
Annabelle, rubber stamp and hear that, and and we're right as a community. If we want to do this, then we have to invest, and we have to join forces. And some of us are academics, some of us are practitioners, and many are actively out there. But we've got to pull together, and those that are really good at this and want to do the research, absolutely, let's try. And so I'm sure the community will have heard that, and you're in a good place to kind of get that message out. So as we're coming towards the back end of our time together, what resources would you recommend to our community? Feel free to signpost some books, podcasts, individuals, practices, whatever on this journey that you've been on. What's been really a great resource that people could maybe dip into?
Well, I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in looking at William Bridges' transition models, he's got a few books which are interesting. The Way of Transition is a really interesting book, because he talks about his own personal transition and the kind of death of his wife, and how he navigated that. So I think that was a really informative book for me. If anyone's specifically interested in research, then Kathy Willis, who's the Professor of Biodiversity at Oxford, has recently released the Good Nature book. And in there's lots of recent scientific findings about the link between green space in our lives and how we can improve our health and mood and longevity. So I definitely recommend having a look at that. This is probably a bit of an unusual one, and I'm not typically drawn to poetry, but Becky Hemsley has some books called Talking to the World and What the World Replied. And her poetry about nature and the seasons really resonates with me. And so I would, if anyone's interested in kind of poetry, I would definitely recommend those books as well. And I know lots of people have recommended kind of the hidden life of trees on this podcast previously, but I recently got the illustrated version, and it's got such wonderful photographs in it and extra information. So I think that was a great resource and inspiration to me as well. So yeah, those are the things that I would definitely encourage people to take a look at.
Thank you. And the poetry angle fits perfectly with Frank's episode that was literally released yesterday. So your episode, the preceding one is Frank, so it very much flows. And at Henley, we will be having Frank as our poet in residence. So he is going to be immersing himself in the event and creating wordsmithing poetry and offering that as a reflection. And he's also facilitating an expert talk. So really pulling on this idea of connecting to nature and words and sense making through poetry is actually a huge part of it all, of how do we encapsulate tangibly that deep, emotive, heartfelt connection. Actually, it's the words, it's the poetry or the written prose. So no, thank you for bringing that into the conversation, and also offering, you know, the other books as a balance out from it. And it's an art and a science, and that actually is what we need to satisfy the soul and our logical kind of rational mind as well, that wants the evidence. So no, that's a really beautiful way of pulling it together. So Annabelle, how can our community find out more about you and get in touch?
So very happy for people to get in touch through my LinkedIn profile. So they find me on LinkedIn, Annabelle Charman, and then I have a website called Guiding Action, which is somewhere else that they could find me. I do have an Instagram page under Guiding Action. I'll confess I haven't been doing much with it because I've been in the research mode, but I will be much more active on there, hopefully sharing some insights from the research in the very near future. So I'd be I'd welcome anyone to get in touch. It'd be lovely to connect.
Thank you, Annabelle. It's fantastic, and it draws our time together to a close. And just to say thank you, Annabelle, for your time and coming on and just giving us such a great, lovely episode and podcast. I mean, we don't often, as I say, research, so it's really opened up another great avenue for our listeners and people to look up a bit more, listen into this, and we would encourage lots to go out there and find some research and get involved. And it's a great way as well to, as Annabelle has really shown us, that the growth and the learning for you as a researcher, and the depth and understanding. And then, of course, as you then venture out of that, as Annabelle is, there is people then want to continue the collaboration with you. They want to understand your knowledge and what you have to offer. And so the journey continues. And we wish you, Annabelle, the very best of luck with that. And we will be seeing you very soon at Coaching Outdoor Live, which we are no more than a few weeks away. Anna Marie and myself are 2 weeks away. Anna Marie is giving me we are in the depths and throes of logistics, details, and activity to bring this in-person event. And it connects so well with what Annabelle has said today. We cannot emphasize enough this in-person connection that people can find themselves. Annabelle's already spelled that out in first of those three: connection to yourself, connection, to people and the coaches around you, and deeper connection. We will be able to have that going on for 2 days out there in the Henley Greenland campus. And it's, we've got all sorts of experiential workshops. We've got expert speaker talks from horses to animals and dogs, right through to team coaching. right through to creative play, all sorts of amazing, to wild swimming and mindful walks. So if you haven't got a ticket yet, I would suggest you come and quickly grab one. There are still some left, and that can be done through the Henley website. And if you haven't had a chance to look at our back catalogue, we are coming towards the end of series 9, and Anna Marie and I would encourage you to dip into the website, Outdoor Coaching Podcast, and you can find a massive wealth and depth of amazing podcasts and information there. And it remains that wherever you are and listening, in the morning, afternoon, or evening, we would like to wish you the very best. And we look forward to you joining us again on another episode of Coaching Outdoor Podcast. Thank you so much.
And if you're listening to this and you missed out on Henley, because it might be now the end of June or the beginning of July 2026, clearly nothing has been planned yet. But just because you missed out on 2025 does not mean that it is too late. So we would love to see you in 2026 and 2027. And who knows what other events Paul and myself might have up our sleeves. And if you do enjoy the podcast, please do share. Our LinkedIn community now is teetering on the 2,300. So we are growing, which is so heartwarming. And our next guest that we have in the calendar, and this is a bit of a sneak peek, is an amazing coach who lives in Beijing. And we have not had a guest from Southeast Asia yet. So we are so keen to go global with this. Again, we're always looking for guests. If you know somebody or want to recommend your good self, if you feel you have a story to tell, and would love to share your experience, do get in touch. So yeah, please share, like, comment, post. What has this episode caught your attention? What has resonated for you? It is all about sharing across the network, and ultimately that is how we're going to get more people connected back to nature and hopefully take their coaching outdoors into the great wild world space. So a big thank you from myself. As ever, love co-hosting with Paul. And Annabelle, thank you so much for your time, and thank you, listener, for your time as well. Catch you on another episode soon.
So if you enjoyed what you've heard, like it, share across your network, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and LinkedIn community page, the Coaching Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks so much in advance for your support.